This is a video on solving equations with a focus on dealing with coefficients. So first of all, before we actually deal with coefficients, we need to know what is a coefficient. Here I have the term 3x. This term is made up of two bits, the 3 and the x. The x is the variable and the 3 is the coefficient. Specifically here, 3 is the coefficient of x. Now, what is that coefficient doing? Well, a coefficient is always multiplying by the variable that comes directly after it. And it's important that we know this before we go to solve equations. We also need to know what the opposite of multiplying is before we begin. And I think you all probably know this already. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So with that in mind, let's look at our first example. So here I have an equation, 5x equals 10. I want to solve for x. This means getting the x variable by itself. So what I want to do is I want to move anything else that's on the same side of the equation as the x to the other side of the equation. So at the moment, x is on the left-hand side of the equation and so is the 5, and I'd like the 5 to move over to the other side of the equation. Remember, when I talk about sides of the equation, I'm talking about stuff on the left of the equal sign and the right of the equal sign. Okay, so the 5 needs to move. So let's have a think. 5 is the coefficient of x, so 5 is multiplying by x. That means if the 5 is going to move across the equal sign, it's going to have to divide on the opposite side. So the x is staying put. The 10 is already on the right-hand side. And I bring the 5 across and divide. Now notice that I don't use the division symbol. I put 10 over 5 to indicate that I'm dividing by 5. And x equals 2 is my solution. Like in the previous video, I can verify to see if I'm correct. So let's see. 5 is multiplying by the x. Now, the x I've decided is 2. 5 by 2 is 10. This is definitely true. So I've verified my solution. It's definitely correct. Just before we start example 2, let me just reiterate something from the previous video, which is that these questions are not about checking can you multiply and divide. I know you can all divide 10 by 5 to get 2. That's really easy. The important thing that you need to focus on when watching these videos is the layout of the steps that we go through when solving an equation. Of course, it's important to get the calculations correct as well, but our focus is on how we lay out the solution. So example 2 is 3x equals 33. Okay, I want to get the x by itself. The coefficient 3 is multiplying by the x, so when I bring it across, it'll have to divide. So x is staying on the left, 33 is already on the right, and the 3 comes across and divides. And again, I write that as 33 over 3. When I calculate this, my solution is x equals 11. Again, I can verify my solution. So let's see, 3 times 11 equals 33. That's correct, so my solution is correct. Notice how in example 1 and example 2, my variable was x in both cases. And I got a different answer depending on the original equation. This is part of the reason that we call things like x variables, because they can vary, they can change depending on the situation, depending on the equation. Here's example 3, 4a equals minus 12. We've used x a few times in the previous two examples, but x isn't the only letter available to us. Sometimes we'll see different letters being used as variables instead. Here, a is my variable. I want to solve for a. That means getting a by itself on the left. The 4 is the coefficient. It's multiplying, so it will have to move across and divide. A is going to stay on the left. Minus 12 is already on the right. The 4 comes across and divides. We now evaluate our solution. And just note here that the rules for division for signs are the same as the rules for multiplication. So a minus divided by a plus is going to give me what kind of a result? It's going to give me a negative result. My result this time is a equals negative 3. Ideally, do simple calculations like this in your head. If you find it tricky though, you can always use the calculator. Again, I can substitute my solution back in for a to verify whether it's correct. And in this case, we can see that 4 multiplied by minus 3 gives us minus 12, so we're correct. We've verified our solution. Okay, here we have example 4. Example 4 is minus 2y equals minus 16. Okay, same story as before. I want to get the variable by itself. The variable this time is y. I want to leave y on the left-hand side. Minus 16 is already on the right-hand side. Now just note that minus 2 is the coefficient of y. So that's going to come over completely and divide into the minus 16. It's not just the 2 I bring over, it's the minus as well. Again, my rules for division are the same as they were for multiplication when it comes to signs. A minus divided by a minus is going to give me a plus. And I can write my solution as y equals 8, or if you like, y equals plus 8. I'm a bit tight on space to verify up the top, so I'll just do it down the bottom here. Minus 2 times 8 is minus 16. Yes, this is correct. If you're in doubt, you can type in the left-hand side of the equation. Minus 2, bracket 8, close bracket. When you press equals, it pops out the minus 16 solution. So that's how we know we're correct. Okay, example 5 is going to be our last one for this video. And it's minus 6y equals 24. Okay, I want to solve for y. That means getting y by itself. So y stays on the left. Now 24 was already on the right. And since minus 6 is the coefficient, I divide by minus 6. Again, don't forget your rules for the signs. If you get totally stuck, you can use the calculator, but try to do it in your head. And our solution this time is y equals minus 4. Again, I can verify my solution. Minus 6 times minus 4, well, a minus by a minus makes a plus. There's no sign over here, it means it's a plus. 6 by 4 is 24. Yeah, I'm correct. So y equals minus 4 is the correct solution for this equation. Remember again, I'm not testing your division abilities here, although they are important. Really what you're focusing on is the layout of your solution to your equation.